I referred a moment ago to this week's cabinet meeting, which produced one of the clearest public displays yet of how insulated Trump may be becoming from reality, from dissenting information, from anything that rocks his worldview that he is the most successful president ever.
Trump is living in an alternate reality, almost like a child. Yes, you're doing a great job. Oh, that's a great picture you just drew of a butterfly. And the reality is the world is blowing up around him.
Trump abruptly stayed in Washington instead of going to Bedminster or attending his son's wedding. So weird. As reports swirled that an Iran deal was imminent, Trump claimed an agreement had been largely negotiated and then suggested an announcement could come shortly. But within hours, administration messaging shifted again toward threats, blockades, and warnings that Iran should not try to outweight him politically. Analysts were calling any deal a huge loss for America in the war. By Thursday morning, there was a renewed exchange of bombs. The result is a growing sense that there's really no end in sight as economic experts raise the prospect that the biggest price pain is still ahead, regardless of whether we strike a permanent deal.
Trump just needs to quit lying to the American people. One day we have a deal, this is almost done, but now we're blowing up more things. We're threatening some other allies in the area that if they don't cooperate, we're going to blow them up too. I talk to a lot of Republicans every single day, and the worry here is that this is going to keep going on and on. Everybody is starting to realize that the longer this happens with no answers and no clear direction, that it's not just hurting our chances in the midterms, it's actually slowly eroding this economy to a point that's going to be tough to ever dig back out.
I want to pick up on that point with some numbers. Sulfur prices reportedly jumped from about $650 per metric ton before the conflict to over $1,000. That's a 63% increase. That flows directly into supply chains, into fertilizer production. That means that we have a massive spike in food prices up ahead in the future, in 6 months, in 9 months. 6 months is really difficult time politically. Petrochemical prices already surging. You see this across all kinds of commodities. And the thing that's really troubling is that we are burning down inventories of these key commodity inputs to our economy rapidly. And the flow of backfill into those inventories is currently stalled. So even if we reach some kind of a long-term ceasefire or peace deal, the economic pain is going to continue to spool out for months and months to come. And the worst of it could hit right around Election Day. I think this is a looming disaster for our economy. And politically, I think it's even worse for the Republicans.
This week in Texas, we saw Ken Paxton trounce the incumbent John Cornyn after Trump endorsed him. Now, MAGA was giddy with excitement. They claimed another scalp. Democrats, I think, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, were equally giddy because they got the candidate they wanted. Cook Political Report shifted the Texas Senate race. This is Texas, ladies and gentlemen, towards Democrats after Paxton won.
Tallarico raised $600,000 in 2 hours after the victory. I still think it's the hardest stretch, including Alaska, of these kinds of marginal Senate races. It's just difficult territory. But look, the bigger repercussion, the ripple effect that you know all too well as a Republican political consultant, is that people in your line of work and my former line of work look at where to deploy resources. And you're already seeing quotes from people like Steve Bannon coming out and saying, yeah, I think we're going to pull Texas out, but it's going to be a huge slog and we're going to have to devote a lot of resources to it. That's going to rob resources on the Republican side from places like Ohio, North Carolina, Maine, the seats that they have to defend, where Democrats are surging and are currently ahead in the polls. So even if Democrats don't win in Texas, simply by having Paxton as their nominee, Republicans are going to have so many resources tied up. It's a little bit like the classic film, The Great Escape, where captured service members in World War II try to break out of prison so that they can tie up as many resources of the enemy as possible.
Let me tell you why Republicans are stupid, because you do stuff like this and you destroy our party from within.
Please. Yes.
Let me tell you why. Right? Exactly. People think money is unlimited, and it's not. And I hear too many Republicans, and I've heard it over and over again, but it's Texas. Republicans are going to win. Of course, we're probably going to win. But if there is a year a Democrat could pick up Texas, it is this year, because we are facing incredible headwinds. The political climate is horrible. Trump is driving the economy into the ground. If there's ever a chance that Democrats win Texas, it is this year. Maybe it's just a 5-point race, but it becomes the most expensive race that we've ever seen. And it probably cost us North Carolina, Alaska, probably Georgia we can't pick up. It is a disaster that we created on our own. It is pure stupidity.
And of course, the Texas story telescopes out to a larger problem that Republicans and the Trump administration now face, because Trump's staffing instability has collided with the political reality that he may no longer have a path to confirming controversial nominees or passing elements of legislation or his agenda that he needs to get through the Senate. We saw Tulsi Gabbard resign within the past week. Pam Bondi has still not been truly replaced as Attorney General. Suddenly, the administration is relying heavily on acting officials at the exact moment that several Republican senators have been kicked to the curb and are now nursing grievances against Trump and no longer fear political retaliation.
We have now pushed the Republican agenda to a standstill. We are not going to get anything done for the rest of the year. So now we've lost Cassie, we've lost Cornyn. He's threatening Murkowski next year. And so where we're sitting is with a thin Republican majority that probably won't go along with him. And what that means is if we have a Supreme Court vacancy, that is not going to be filled. And so we're sitting here stuck in neutral at the precise time that we need to be pushing an agenda forward. This is a huge problem for us.
Each one of these Trump acts of retribution, sidelining key potential Republican allies in the Senate feels like one of those old Bugs Bunny cartoons where there's a bomb and a fuse and you light the end of the fuse. It's not going off now. It's going to go off in the future. So right on the heels of Paxton winning, Trump turned around and threatened Lisa Murkowski. So why the heck is Murkowski going to carry water for this administration in the future? That is lighting the end of a fuse for a bomb that could go off when he needs Senator Murkowski the most next year. Maybe it's a Supreme Court nomination. Maybe it's a critical piece of legislation. Maybe it's a reconciliation bill. That's what you're beginning to see unfold. It's not necessarily the consequences. It's lighting the fuses.
Why I want to switch gears? Because I don't know if you know this, Matt. Donald Trump is perfectly healthy. He made his third trip. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. His third trip to Walter Reed for another physical, another checkup. Historically, presidents and their teams have hid serious conditions. They've minimized symptoms of selectively releasing information because the presidency is tied so heavily to perceptions of strength, stability, and competence. We had these questions with Biden, but I've seen a lot of pro-Trump figures on social media post things like he's superhuman, he's unstoppable, he's the healthiest guy in politics. I don't see that with my eyes. Matt, what do we believe here?
For one thing, I heard that the doctors at Walter Reed rated his potential lifespan as a 10, 9, 8, 7. I think that there's a poker tell effect happening here. The harder Trump and his allies exaggerate on any issue, the more suspicious one should be of what they're saying. Whenever Trump calls something great, the best ever. In this cabinet meeting that we're going to discuss shortly, they were talking about this is the greatest economy in the history of the world. That is an immediate translation into this is the worst economy that anyone can recall. The same thing pertains to his health. When they talk about him having superhuman strength, what they really mean is he's grievously ill. And there are Republican insiders who are saying this out loud. Rick Wilson posted on Substack this week. He thinks Trump is dying, not in the sense that we all are mortal, but in the sense that it could be imminent. If I could write a memo to all of the news media right now, what I would say is you need to change your baseline. You've long afforded political figures the grace to assume they're healthy unless we have evidence to the contrary. I think we've now seen enough pieces of evidence that the media should be coming at this from the assumption that he is seriously ill. And the burden of proof is now on Trump to demonstrate that he's not.
America has now suffered through 2 aging presidents with questions about their cognitive health and physical stamina. The media needs to start that questioning. What we're getting too much are things like what I'm seeing on True Social this week, that Biden passed 0 cognitive tests and Obama passed 0 cognitive tests, and that Trump passed 3 cognitive tests, and that somehow means he's okay. The reality is we can see with our own 2 eyes, Trump has fallen asleep. We can see the swollen ankles. We can see the bruises on his hands. It's time to ask the serious questions.
Don't you love the way that he keeps bragging about this? It would be like if someone said, I went to the doctor for the 12th time this year, and I once again aced my test for syphilis. Okay, so many visits to the doctor, sir. I referred a moment ago to this week's cabinet meeting, which produced one of the clearest public displays yet of how insulated Trump may be becoming from reality, from dissenting information, from anything that rocks his worldview that he is the most successful president ever. Cabinet officials delivered lavish, almost theatrical praise, calling Trump the architect of the greatest economy the world has ever known and the singular leader capable of stopping Iran. All of this raises a deeper question, Matt. We've treated these kinds of cabinet meetings and kiss-assery from his cabinet officials as a suck-up story for years and years now.
Trump is living in an alternate reality. And we saw that in this cabinet meeting when he talked about the war in Iran and how Ken Paxton won. And so that means Americans support what's happening in the war. It's also where he threw out the line, I don't care about the midterms shortly after that, which is abundantly clear that he doesn't care about the midterms. What we continue to see is that he is being fed almost like a child. Yes, you're doing a great job. Oh, that's a great picture you just drew of a butterfly. And the reality is, the world is blowing up around him. America is blowing up around him. He seems so disconnected with what is really happening because he has a cabinet that is spoon feeding this different reality. He doesn't get the real data. He doesn't really get the news. He only watches and sees the things that he wants to see. And as a Republican operative, where this really comes to play is the American public. They are seeing gas prices go up. They're seeing their food prices go up. Trump seems to be more consumed with MMA fights, his picture on a $250 bill, and a new ballroom. And these cabinet meetings are more like a North Korea tribute video than a room telling him what he needs to know to actually make good decisions.
You haven't just seen this kind of thing happen in authoritarian governments. We've seen it in the US. Nixon, in his final years, became increasingly insulated, didn't want to hear bad news about Watergate, about what was going on in Vietnam. We've seen it with Clarence Thomas. He doesn't read mainstream news. He reads far-right journals, and it creates a distorted sense of reality. That seems to be what's happening with Trump. I think it is very fair to question whether Trump is even cognitively aware of how the war is going, what the state of the American economy is. And that brings into question whether he's really functionally leading American government at all anymore. And on that note, we want to introduce a new piece of our rundown segment where we try to tie everything together. Matt, if there's a dominant theme that's emerged for you, if there's something you've learned from the top stories driving the past week, what would it be for you?
Here's something we can all pick up. The narrative is that MAGA claimed another scalp and that Trump still dominates the GOP politically. But everything around him increasingly feels unstable, reactive, and personality driven. And this is where the media has gotten the story wrong. Trump is not the Godfather. He's not some all-powerful Don that's making these moves. He sounds more like Charlie Sheen in his winning era.
The people are doing exactly what they should be doing, which is watching me, because we have all the answers, we have all the goal, we have all the solution. And keep in mind, like anytime I roll something out, my plan is the best one in the room, and people are starting to wake up and realize that their plan is shit, my plan is gold. Walk into my plan, and you're going to win-win. Winner.com.
That's the energy I felt this week. And so what I learned is that the only reason they keep following Trump is because MAGA is a cult, and Republicans need to stop drinking the Kool-Aid, or it's just going to kill the GOP.
I think my lesson from the week is that we're entering the stage of the authoritarian feedback loop. I invoked the metaphor earlier of it's like a cartoon bomb and lighting the end of a fuse. What we've seen is a brew of mixed messaging and fear-based loyalty. That's what was on display in the cabinet meeting, performative praise, purges, retribution, informational isolation, and inability to admit weakness, and the hollowing out of institutions that are supposed to keep the gears of government grinding forward. And what's the bill that's come due just this week? The Iran negotiations becoming incoherent, choosing Paxton over Cornyn and him crushing, despite the electability risk that's going to come back and bite Republicans, the Senate confirmations becoming harder, the ability to pass any legislation of any kind becoming increasingly tenuous. And then, of course, these very weird performative moments on health and Trump's cognitive ability and grasp of reality. Think about that fuse. There's more and more bills coming. And that's that kind of authoritarian feedback loop that we're seeing spool out and spool out.